Hello, I'm here today to talk about awareness and consciousness and mindfulness and the possible differences between these terms. So there's no lexicon for the human experience, so inevitably different people are going to define these terms differently. And one of those terms is in the title of the school that I'm going to, the Pacific Center of Awareness and Bodywork. And in the awareness portion, have you even heard some of the instructors interchange awareness and mindfulness, for example? But going back to something, before I started even going to the school, I went to a workshop about a kind of therapy, and the person putting on the workshop said awareness is key. It's a really important part of doing this therapy. And then she went on to say that she didn't really understand that part. She didn't know what awareness was, and she couldn't really explain it. And then she proceeded with the workshop. And I found that a little baffling, even though I was able to get a lot of good stuff out of that workshop. I was just like, wow, how can you teach something where you don't understand the basic underlying principle? Well, on the one hand. On the other hand, there's nobody that doesn't understand awareness on some level, because we all have it. We're all aware. And so I'm just going to say how I see these terms. So if you're watching this, you're conscious, and that's different from aware, because you can be unconscious and still be aware of what you're dreaming. So the awareness is there whether you're conscious or unconscious. So in a way, being conscious is a state of being that happens within awareness. But then we talk about states of consciousness. And there's a state of consciousness in which you can be aware of awareness to some degree. And I say that to be confusing. It's actually not that confusing. It's confusing to talk about. But it's one of those things that if you just sort of meditate on it and experience it for yourself, it's so incredibly simple that it becomes difficult to talk about, I think. So, speaking of meditation and awareness, about 10 years ago, I read about this kind of meditation where, in order to investigate awareness, and it was kind of worded in the idea of like the observer. Like we have ourselves, we have our personalities, we have who we think we are, and those are just layers of ego, not in a bad way, but like, self-identity. And we can think that we know who we are. That's doing the observing. But if we can observe that, then that's not that which is actually observing. At least if you want to really get down to the root of where does this come from, where we can conceive, where we can have a sense of identity, where we can receive tactile information and vision and sound and all the senses. What is that? What is that? Like the essence of awareness. So this meditation practice was that anything that you can observe, you write off as that's not the essence of awareness, because it's something that's existing within awareness. It's not the foundation of what is awareness. So I was doing this meditation, and I did it for, I don't remember if it was a few weeks or a few months, but one night I was in a studio recording room where I had the lights off and the door closed, so it was really quiet, really dark, and I was just doing that meditation, probably for a couple of hours, and I went through all these deeper and deeper levels, and I came to a point where there was almost nothing left. There's hardly anything I could still throw out. My mind was very blank, very spacious. I threw out the spaciousness. I threw out every last anything that came up as a concept or an image, all of that. And I think I eventually threw out that which was seeking to find an answer. And then there was this flash of a hall of mirrors facing each other into infinity. There was a flash of infinity. And it totally pulled me out of it. Like, I was suddenly a self again, and I was like, whoa, that was crazy. And like, I think I really got somewhere with that. And I was really excited about it. And the next day, I happened to be serving food not bombs in Portland, Oregon, with an ordained Zen monk, and I was telling him about this experience, and his response was very like, yeah, a lot of, crazy psychedelic things can happen when you start meditating really deeply, and it's important to note that that's still not it. You haven't found the answer. Because if you think you have found the answer, you haven't. Kind of a thing. And I felt very deflated, and I was like, oh. And of course I got defensive, like, oh, what is he know? Like, that was my experience, and blah, blah, and it was real. And it was. And my attachment to that experience was also just that. It was a feature of the ego. That experience was now in the past, and holding on to it is not an accomplishment. But it gave me a taste of the ineffability of awareness, and that allowed me to see from a more open perspective of where all these other parts of the human experience come in. So coming out of pure awareness, there's an experience that I call becoming, and you can experience it if there's like a sudden shock to your system and you forget that you're even a person for a second for whatever reason, like you get hit in the head, or I don't know, maybe supposedly some people can do it from just a sneeze, or there's maybe a moment when you're waking up, not from a dream, but from blankness, or anytime you've been completely dissociated and coming back to some idea of self. It's this experience of openness filled with fullness at the same time. And there's a subtle bliss or joy about it. Like something about life. And these are all just pointers, you know, that saying, the hand pointing to the moon is just a hand. So to me, that's a little something about awareness. And again, if you're watching this right now, you're experiencing the effects of awareness on some level. So awareness, consciousness, mindfulness. To me, mindfulness is really focusing on the input that you're receiving from the outside world or from inside of yourself and from within inside of yourself. Thoughts, feelings, ideas, colors, sensations, stories, images, all that stuff in mindfulness is kind of like you're paying attention to all of that as consciously as possible. Mindfulness, to me, has a limit, though, because it's something that occurs within consciousness. And for most humans, we've got 20 bits of information or something per second that we can process at a time, consciously. And then subconsciously, we've got some billion. I don't remember the numbers, but it's like billions of bits of information are happening within us. And then like we're only able to consciously hold a tiny fraction of that, tiny fraction of that at a time. But you can increase your mindfulness with practice. And then mindfulness, as it refers to an interpersonal relationship, has a lot to do with taking into consideration what you know about that person, how they might react to things that you say or do, putting an effort to know the difference between what you think about them and what their own experience might actually be. Yeah, all of these things are related and important, and so I made this video to help sort of stew on that, consider the nuances of each one, and yeah, I didn't intend to have a decisive conclusion about anything. Just wanted to put that out there as potential perspective opening stuff to meditate on if you're into that kind of thing. So mahalo for watching. Have a great day. And I'm using a bit of mindfulness right now. Standing on this log. Enjoying this beautiful bamboo forest.